Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the first of our Lunch with the League series. Before we start, I would like to make a few announcements. Please remain muted throughout the session. There will be a Q&A session after we hear from our speaker today, so if you have any questions for him, please put them in the chat directed to Pat Malchek. Finally, I would like to advise you that this session will be recorded, and the link to the recording of each of the sessions will be available at our League website. This information is in the chat. At this time, I would like to introduce the president of our local league, Betsy Patterson, who will make a few remarks.
Welcome to the 2022 Lunch with the League series presented by the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. I'm Betsy Patterson, the president of our local league. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920, 6 months before ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women their right to vote nationwide. It was established as a nonpartisan grassroots organization to encourage voters to become active participants in our democracy. In addition to registering voters, informing them about the issues and the candidates through voter guides and candidate forums, and getting out the vote during elections, we also educate the public about how our government works. In this series, we will interview Ventura County elected officials to learn what their roles are in the government, what skills are required, and what challenges they face. It is not a candidate forum or a campaign opportunity. It is a chance to educate the public about the work they do in the day-to-day functioning of our county. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you gain a better understanding of what our locally elected officials do in their jobs. And now I would like to turn the program back over to our Voter Services Co-Chair, Kathy Morgan.
Thank you very much for those words, Betsy. We're going to screen share a chart that shows how our county government is organized. So hopefully we'll get that screen share up in just a second. What I want to explain that in this series, our intent is to focus on those county officials who are elected, and we will be interviewing them over the course of the next 7 weeks. Although we have multiple county supervisors, for the purpose of this series, we will only be interviewing one of them who will share with us the various aspects of the role of county supervisor. Thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to introduce our speaker today, who is our county assessor, Mr. Dan Goodwin. Mr. Goodwin was elected as Ventura County Assessor in 1998. He has been re-elected 5 times. He started his career in the Ventura County Assessor's Office before moving to the private sector, resulting in experience in both public assessment and private appraisal. He has previously served as president of the Ventura Chapter of the Appraisal Institute and president of the California Assessors Association. He has multiple licenses and certificates, and in 2014, he was honored by the Los Angeles County Bar Association, who gave him the Award of Excellence by a governmental official. Welcome, Mr. Goodwin, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me.
We appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us about your position, and we do have a few questions prepared for you. The first one was, could you please explain to us what the qualifications and prerequisites that prepare one for the role of the county assessor?
Well, first of all, of course, to be elected, you have to be a registered voter and live in the county to which you wish to be elected assessor. Mm-hmm. The California State Board of Equalization works closely with assessors, and they provide in the Revenue and Tax Code under Section 8 a requirement that the assessor hold a certificate in appraisal from the Board of Equalization in order to practice as the assessor. Otherwise, it's an office that requires the integrity and confidence of voters so that they elect that person to be assessor.
Well, thank you very much for that information. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How long is your term, and are there term limits?
Well, as you mentioned, I've been elected 5 times, so
Mhm.
no term limits. Each term is 4 years, and it's on the same cycle as the governor's elections every 4 years. We're in the same pattern of election cycle as the gubernatorial for California.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. What is your department's budget and how many employees are in your department?
My department's overall budget is about $14.8 million. And we have what's called in the county of Ventura has a net situation. There are some reimbursements for our services from the special districts. There's over 100 stakeholders that receive part of the property tax check that is written by each of our property owners. And so those participants who share in the property tax are all interested in the assessor getting their work done, of course, and they are charged by the auditor controller a small fee as a part of that revenue that is distributed to them under the apportionment. You'll hear more about that from our auditor controller. But so as a result, my net budget, the assessor's net budget is about $11 million. So overall, 14.8, and then the positions allocations, we have 128 positions in our budget, of which currently 124 are filled. Of course, there's sometimes retirements and other issues, rotation.
All right. Well, thank you for that. What would you say the main functions of your office are? What is it you do every day?
Well, the main functions are substantial when you consider the assessment of property is a statutory requirement in California. All 58 counties have their own assessor, and it's a constitutionally established office in California. The assessor, the sheriff, and the district attorney are the 3 that the Constitution requires to be elected. And so those duties, often people are homeowners, and so they think about home property taxes. But assessment duties include really actually begin with identifying who owns property. So we run kind of like a small title company. We have our own transfer experts who read all the deeds that are recorded in the recorder's office and determine who is the owner of property, if there's been a change of ownership, fractional or 100% ownership, identify what would be the mailing address, as well as, of course, site address of the properties. So that's a whole starting point, is who owns the property. And under Prop 13, reassessable events are dictated primarily under changes of ownership or new construction. So those become very key starting points. Also, of course, then all the building permits from all the cities in the county are collected and analyzed. We have copies of plans from all the projects that are being built. The managing of the ownership issue also provides for answering tens of thousands of questions each year. We receive somewhere in the area of 60,000 phone calls a year. That does not include my wife calling me. Those are just the business calls. And so we have lots of questions. We also service questions over through email, internet, and then through the front counter. The county during this coronavirus time has had various restrictions on access to the government center. But at the current time, 3 days a week, people are able to come to our front counter, and we have a substantial number of visitors at that point. Okay, I haven't even gotten to appraisers, right? We have 55 appraisers, 18 auditor appraisers that work on business properties, and 16 assessor techs that support the appraisers. So the appraisal part of the business is of course, the valuation thing. What is the property worth? And under California law, we have, with Prop 13, we have what's called a base year value we establish and track when a change of ownership occurs or the new construction. And then, as some of you probably know, each year there might be a CPI adjustment up to 2% applied to that each year. So modest increases every year. Of course, there are some years, like in 2007, 8, 9, when market values were going down, right? And so at those points in time, we had a substantial increase in the numbers of properties to reduce values. And that's very important too. I consider my assignment accurate assessments, whether not a revenue agent, whether they're going up or down is not important to me. My assignment is by law and certainly by my own goal is to be as accurate and fair as possible in all assessments. So we actually started in 2007, reducing 9,000 assessments, which was a full year ahead of the Lehman Brothers problem in August of 08. By 2008, the roll had a reduction of about 18,000 parcels. Eventually, that worked up through the time period of 2010-11 to where we had over 80,000 properties in our county had reduced assessments below their Prop 13 maximum. And then, of course, as time moved on, market changed. We start increasing values as the market changes. So the good news is I'd send people a letter saying you have getting your equity back. The bad news is the assessor saw it happen and has to adjust the value this year. So we try to communicate, of course, and this is another very big part of our assignment, is communication. Not communication with taxpayers is extremely important because the assessor is one of the few places where interaction with government is not for what can you do for me, it's how much are you charging me for taxes, right? And so people are very concerned about making sure that that's done right. Communication becomes extremely important. And I am very fortunate. We have a great staff in this county, employees who are really dedicated to doing their job and doing it well, doing it in an honorable way. One of the things I encourage and teach is that, just being a bureaucrat who has a monopoly isn't very exciting or honorable work. But when you do government service in a way that gives people confidence, gives them knowledge and information about their situation, answers their questions, helps them out, that's an honorable thing to do. And it makes government service much more pleasurable because you feel like you're contributing to the success. I receive a lot of communication back from taxpayers. Occasionally, because a lot of people their goal is to minimize taxes. They want a reduction, but oftentimes their emails and things. I got an email today. I have it handy, but anyway, the bottom line, it was an email that said your appraiser Ryan was extremely helpful and courteous to me yesterday. He helped me figure out some issues with an adjoining property owner and solve the problem. Appreciate it very much. It's the day before I had another letter where a property owner from Simi Valley had told me about a situation with their land and where our staff was able to help them work out through the title issue parts and questions and save them a substantial amount of money that they'd already started to pay regular title companies and attorneys to help them sort out. So a lot of the services are in just that kind of ownership area. The valuation, I actually think, let me do this. Let me hit a couple of highlights of it because I could probably spend an hour just talking about our valuation assignments. But we, for example, we have in property types, of course, people think residential, but residential isn't just houses or apartments. There's mobile home parks, there's commercial property. Commercial property ranges from the large shopping centers, the malls, to the small single tenant buildings on secondary locations of streets that don't have high traffic flow, right? But those are all commercial properties that have to be appraised and assessed for taxes. And many of those commercial properties have what's also called personal property, all right? So they have business equipment that's accessible. And so they also, depending on the size of business, we have Amgen is my largest assignment in terms of overall assessed value, which they have basically a $10 million a year tax bill in round numbers. They have about $1 billion worth of property. And so there's substantial amount of time spent on their business personal property. They have all kinds of, not just computer equipment, but all kinds of stainless steel piping and all that's made for making equipment. That adds up to about $500 million in value, that personal property equipment. So you have that kind of thing at Procter & Gamble, another large company, to like say the small ones. Industrial properties, agricultural properties. Agricultural properties are just, lemon orchards, avocados, row crops for strawberries and all. It's also the equipment. We also have to assess their tractors, their pipelines, their pumps, their barns, all that kind of equipment is a part of the ag business. Business personal property gets down to things like Xerox machines and things that are small. One of the things we have done though is we Ventura County utilized a provision of state law where we could ask the Board of Supervisors to agree to allow me to exempt any business property where the total was less than 10,000 in market value. And the reason for that is a $10,000 business property total is about $100 tax bill. Well, part of the logic is, well, why are we spending $200 in labor to do an analysis, set up tax bills, and in some cases, if they're not paid, pursue unsecured tax bills, when the bill that we're going to collect is only $100. And so I went to the board and asked them, would you agree to allow me to exempt these properties from assessment and tax collection because it costs more than the taxes that are generated. So we've done that in this county, and that's been beneficial to small businesses. The assessor also assesses boats, airplanes, the aircraft you see flying over. You're in Camarillo, so you see a lot of the small private jets that land at the airport there. Mm-hmm. And so a $30 million jet aircraft has a pretty good sized tax bill. You think about each $1 million is $10,000 in taxes, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's 30 million, it's 30 times 10. Mm-hmm. So you have, and then we have timeshares, we have oil and gas properties, we have sand and gravel operations. So anyway, kind of leave it there. I didn't get into possessory interest. Possessory interest, well, I'll just say this, because some of you may own an airplane, have a hangar or a tie down at the airport in Camarillo, or a boat in a slip in Channel Islands Marina. Possessory interests are when a private party owns property on government land. The government's not taxable, but the right of ownership of that interest has to be assessed by the assessor. So we assess things like tie downs and hangars at the airport, even though it's the Camarillo airport is a county airport. Okay. Should I keep going in that kind of, or maybe should we move to the next question?
I think we can see that you keep very busy.
Yeah, we have many things to do. It's a timeline. I love, yeah.
I think many of us probably didn't know about all the different aspects. I mean, I think many of us think about homes and that's about it, or businesses. Well, the next question that we had for you is the kinds of challenges you might be facing in your office.
So always I started to say the word timeline. Our job is on a constant timeline that waits, and as this expression goes, time waits for no man. Mm-hmm. We know this, that on July 1st, we start our cycle of our year. Our work has already been organized. The assignments for each crew have already been distributed to them, so they know when July 1st comes, what their assignment's going to be. We will start working through our cycle. It runs all the way through the calendar, and so the big challenge is to make sure all of this work is done and properly identified and put on what's called the assessment roll that I hand to the auditor controller on July 1st. I usually get that wrapped up in late June, but that is the first and most important challenge. And that is, it's an item in value. The total assessed value of the roll now is the net value is about $152 billion. It's about 156 point something billion gross. But then we also, which I didn't mention on the job thing, we exempt $4.5 billion from taxation for things like nonprofit hospitals, the cemeteries, low-income housing. Low-income housing under the Welfare Act applies for exemptions. There's private colleges can apply for an exemption. The Reagan Library. So many properties, museums have an exemption opportunity. Now that has to be reviewed every single year because they have to apply each year for their exemption. And one of the key issues is the property has to be used for their exemptable purpose. So let's just say a church owns two properties side by side. One of them has a church building on it, a parking lot, and then they have a vacant lot that hasn't been developed yet. If they apply for exemption on both, we'll only exempt the one that has the building and the parking lot because it's being used for the exemptable purpose. The vacant land can't receive an exemption until it's put into a use that meets the exemption requirements. Same thing goes for, like I said, museums, low-income housing, hospitals, all kinds of things. Okay, so that challenge is getting all of that done on time, having it ready and delivered. Another big challenge is communication, which I've already touched on communication a little bit. And that is so important. I have a rule. I don't want the assessor to be on the front page of the newspaper. that usually means something went wrong. Fortunately, you haven't seen me on the front page very many times.
No.
But the communication issue is where that can break down quickly, and mistakes can happen. So I was going to bring this up, but one example, it can be as simple as a computer error at a print shop. One of my most frustrating mistakes was, and I don't remember, it was 5 years ago or 8 years ago, but one time in Camarillo, the company that was doing the printing of our valuation notices we were sending to everybody, it's a 2-page item. One page has the owner's name and address that goes in the envelope and shows up in the envelope box. The other side has the information about the assessment. Well, there was a large number of these properties in Camarillo where the print shop accidentally moved things over one page. And so the page that had the name and address had the neighbor's ownership information and values. And then the next one over, the next one over, the next one over. That was a bad thing. And that was strictly a print shop computer. Actually, the information the assessor delivered to the print shop was correct. So once we, of course, found out that was happening, we stopped the distribution because we don't send them all out the same day. We send out 300,000 value notices, right? So when you send out 300,000, you can't give them all to the post office one time without it choking, right? So you give them about 40,000 per batch. Anyway, that's a communication error that never happens again. The other part, communication with the county departments, with staff, with the state of California. And under the coronavirus, communication has been hindered some. Certainly, it's more challenging with staff because we have some of our staff working from home, which I can get into more detail later on if you like. Also, I was thinking about in terms of challenges is surprises. One of the big challenges for an assessor is when something happens you don't expect. For example, one of the big recent ones was a Thomas fire, right? We had 1,000 structures destroyed in our county in that one fire. Of course, there was no anticipation of that. That wasn't on our workload when we organized our work for the year. So that required a substantial amount of reallocation of resources and reorganizing how we would approach it to be efficient. Also, those are handled under what's called the Calamity claim process. And so if we were to have a big earthquake, that would be another kind of thing like that, a surprise. The coronavirus is a surprise. How did we all of a sudden, when things were getting shut down almost 2 years ago in March of 2020, how were we going to get our work done? What were we going to do? Fortunately, and this is something very important for your assessor, is to be someone who anticipates. So even before I knew how exactly I'd use them, about 13 years ago, we started scanning all of our documents and knowing that somewhere along the way we would have computer systems where scanned documents might replace file cabinets. So eventually we did. We scanned more than 2 million pages of documents in those first 4 years. We replaced a sea of file cabinets I had spread out all over. Still have some file cabinets for certain uses, but you want somebody who anticipates and provides for that. Other challenges are of course, in the circumstances, is the the training of your staff, keeping them trained, keeping them continuing education requirements up to date, and how to manage, which is actually one of the things I really enjoy about this assignment, because the assessor really is a administrator, right? In some counties, if we're a very small county, we have counties out of the 58 that have maybe 5 employees because they're very tiny. So the assessor ends up doing a lot of the valuation work. In a county our size, I'm an administrator. I do no appraising, but it's very important your assessor, and this is one of the things of a requirement, it's very important your assessor knows how to do an appraisal, knows the valuation techniques and methodologies, because if there's an appeal and there's questions about it, property owner wants to meet, it's important that I'm able to look at the situation and verify that the methodology was correct for the assignment. I guess I'll just finish this. There's one more thing about the challenges is the complexity of the assignment, because it is so varied, ranges over so many different property types. Obviously, I can't be the expert, the most knowledgeable person on every type, right? And so there's this whole important thing of hiring the right people, training people in specific tasks so that they do become the expert on various kinds of properties, also on the revenue and tax code, that they are experts on various aspects of the revenue tax code. We have 3, it composes 3 books, so it's very large. Okay, maybe we'll stop the challenges at that.
Well, it sounds like you faced quite a few of them. Yes. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for all this information. And at this time, we're going to open it up to questions from the attendees, and I will turn it over to my co-chair, Pat Malchek, to facilitate the Q&A. Thank you so much, Mr. Goodwin.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking the questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Goodwin, and thank you again for graciously sharing your time with the League today. I have a few questions that are now coming in from our attendees. And the first question that I have for you is, we are wondering how many parcels are in the county?
Okay, there's about real property parcels. Now there's 2 categories. Okay, so the primary category is the taxable ones. Those are the ones in private ownership. There's about 250,000 of those. And then there's about 50,000 personal property accounts. In other words, not real estate. The item that's in addition is our county, as many of you would know, has about half our land in the national forest. So all the land above Ojai, above Fillmore in the mountains, that is federal government owned property. So we don't assess that. Oh. But the private property parcels would be in that 250,000 area, of which residential property, I don't know the exact number. I know exemption wise, though, we have about 130,000 homeowner exemptions on file. So obviously the single family residential properties would exceed that, probably about 140,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next question is that is just coming in. How can we as voters gauge the effectiveness of your office?
One of the things that would be a good measure is who's looking over my shoulder, right? Who's watching my work on a professional basis, right? Sure. I actually thought that might be one of the questions. So I'll tie it into this. So I really have the State Board of Equalization that studies my work from time to time. I have the local, the county auditor controller has certain reports, and they will examine certain practices in our office, verify certain things about my methods for ensuring that we don't have any fraud or any inappropriate actions taking place. And then also we have the grand jury. The grand jury likes to talk to me once a year and look at some things once in a while. But let me focus on the biggest one. The biggest one is the State Board of Equalization. They have a regular practice of reviewing our work. One part of what they do is called samples, and another part is called surveys. I did bring with me, I had on here this currently I'm in a situation where the State Board of Equalization and their reports would be available to the public. So back to your question about how could you know, you could look up on the California Board of Equalization's website, the county assessors, and look up the surveys that they've done on the Ventura County Assessor and see what they write up. They write up, so every couple of years they'll do either one or the other. For example, this letter says this would be kind of just a sort of a sampling of how things get into detail, but it gives you some assurance. Dear Mr. Goodwin, Ventura County was selected for a sampling of the 2021 assessment roll. The preparation and selection of parcels in review, we need your assistance to determine, one, if any of these parcels on the large assessed value list are currently under appeal for the roll year 2020, and if any of the parcels listed are part of a larger economic unit, appraisal unit. If so, please identify all of the parcels included in the appraisal unit. The Ventura County large assessed value report has been uploaded to your assessor portal, and then it gives me some details about how to check that. And then they have a list of other things. They want to look at functional and economic integrity, highest and best use when parcels were analyzed, contiguity, common ownership, current or prior combined sales of parcels. So that would be one of the things. Another would be, of course, just an individual's own interaction with our office. Have their assessment value notices given them a concern about the assessor's enrolled values, and so there's an appeal process for that. There's a formal appeal to be filed in the timeline of basically July, August, September, up through September 15th. And so then there's a whole process for hearing an appeal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is one in particular question regarding the Thomas fire. In a situation such as the Thomas fire, where a home burns and has to be rebuilt, how does Prop 13 protections affect the reassessment of the newly built home? What if the rebuild has increased square footage?
Okay, so it's that's a very important question, and it was on the mind of everyone who lost their property, right? So what the assessor does, so use the scenario, they'll say the property was totally destroyed, and so what the assessor has on file is a record of what was there before the fire, right? So we had a land and improvements, and we had something about a description of the improvements on our records based on the various inspections over the years. So the size, the quality, the age of the property, and various amenities that go with that. So if the homeowner builds, and this, what the law uses this phrase, something substantially similar, then we would assign, even though it costs more to build it now than when it was first built, we will well, first of all, when the destruction happens, we remove the improvement value, and so they only had land value remaining, and that was part of under this calamity claim. Then once the structure is eventually replaced built on the property to replace the old one, if it's substantially similar in size and quality to what was destroyed, they will retain their old assessment, the original assessment. Under some circumstances, maybe somebody had let's say a 2,000 square foot house that was that preceded the fire, and after the fire, they decide to replace it with a 3,000 square foot house. What we do then is we assess the first 2,000 square feet as if it was the original Prop 13 value. And the additional 1,000 square feet, we would treat just like if they were to never had a fire, but just decided to do an addition. So let's just say, my house didn't burn down. It's a 2,000 square foot house. I go and get a permit to add a 1,000 square foot addition. The assessor comes in, looks at that, and as of the date that's built, they would put the market value of that 1,000 square feet and add it to the old base year of the existing structure. So that's how we handled the fire damaged properties.
Thank you. That's real helpful to know that. Next question along Prop 13. Can you explain what homeowners may need to know about Prop 19, which passed in 2020?
Okay. So Prop 19 has some similarities to what existed when it came to changing ownership, and a couple of categories. One was the changing ownership where somebody relocates. So let's say they came from another county and moved to Ventura County, and they want to bring their Prop 13 value with them to the Ventura County property. Ventura already provided for that transfer ability, and so if they so it wasn't as much of a change for us. And then the other item which I'll speak to is where someone under Prop 19 wants to transfer their ownership of their home to a child, for example, and the child would like to retain mom and dad's value from Prop 13 on the primary residence. Okay, so since I'm talking about that one, so what happened maybe the changes, this will take too long to all the changes. We can still, anyway, the rule is we can still do that under Prop 19. It's just been reduced now to just the primary residence of the transfer or meaning let's call it in this case, the parent who owned it. It used to be before Prop 19, they could transfer they had a rental duplex, they could transfer that to a child, and as long as it was worth less than $1 million in assessed value, they could retain, the child could receive the old Prop 13 value. But that no longer occurs now under Prop 19. Prop 19 eliminated that opportunity. Under Prop 19, a person can only transfer their primary residence if they want to keep the Prop 13 value. They can only transfer their primary residence to their child, and then their child must move into the property, file a homeowner's exemption claim with the assessor, and move into that as their primary residence. So that's a big change for parent-to-child transfers under 19. And on the assessors, on my Ventura County Assessor website, you can read quite a bit about this process. There's also, you can download forms to, if you would like to do that, there's an ability to download the form to file with the assessor. The other item was, let's just say somebody lived in Pasadena and they're moving to Camarillo, and they're selling a home in Pasadena for $2 million, and they're buying one in Camarillo for $1.5 million. But they had lived in that Pasadena house way back from when the value was only $250,000. So because they purchased a home at a lower value than the one they sold, they would be able to transfer that whole value to their replacement house. A different kind of arrangement is in place now where, let's just say they sold a home in San Bernardino for $500,000 and bought a home in Camarillo for $1.5 million. Now they would only get the benefit of whatever was their base year value under Prop 13 on the home they sold, the original property, on the first $500,000 of the Camarillo house. The other $1 million would be added at its current market value. So they get a partial benefit under Prop 19 in that case.
Okay, thank you. I have just one more quick question. Will you have a statement in the voter's guide or voter's edge?
What was the last part? I couldn't hear you very good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will you have a statement in the voter's guide or voter's edge?
Oh, I always do it on the voter's guide. So I'm I'm very traditional. So yeah, that's my bias.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, I will now turn it back over to Kathy for a few concluding remarks. Mr. Goodwin, you have answered quite a few questions today, and we've had some great questions from our attendees.
Yes,
so
thank you.
I'll turn it over to Kathy now. Thank you.
May I add one thing?
Yes.
I wanted to thank you ladies for what you're doing as an organization. My mother lived in Camarillo back in 1969, and she had joined the League of Women Voters. I remember as a young fella, I didn't know too much about it. I didn't know anything about it, but I thought it was interesting. My mom said, "Oh, I've joined the League of Women Voters," And so I know it's been an important organization for a long time in our county. So thank you for the good work you do.
Well, thank you. Okay, Kathy?
Oh, well, thank you for that too, Mr. Goodwin. That was very nice to hear about your history with the League of Women Voters. We really appreciate you joining us today and helping us better understand the roles and responsibilities of your office. I certainly learned myself that it was much more complex than I ever imagined, because frankly, I never gave it a whole lot of thought before. But we wanted to inform our voters, the voting public, of what everybody does in the county, what all the county officials do. So we really appreciate you coming today and sharing all this information. I would like to remind everyone that next Wednesday, we will meet at the same time, same place, and we will be hearing from Sheriff Bill Ayub. Also, I want to remind everybody that these recordings will be on our website. If you miss one of the sessions or wish to look at the recordings, you can go to the League website to get the link for that. And for that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who attended. We really appreciate you coming, and we appreciate Mr. Goodwin sharing his time and expertise with us. So this concludes our presentation today. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Thank you.